Good morning, everybody. We're going to start day 3. We're going to begin this morning with the reports from the contact groups and other groups. One thing that I want to request to the interpreters, because I cannot turn up the volume in this console here, so the interpreters, when they interpret from another language that is not English, would you speak closer to the microphone so I can hear you better? Because the volume is very, very low, especially when I listen to, or when delegations are speaking in Chinese and Arabic.
We'll do our best, sir.
We had a couple of questions. No?
Good morning, Chairman. The interpreters said, yes, the interpreters said they will do their best to speak louder for you.
Good morning. So we had a couple of questions pending from yesterday's plenary, and the first one was the designation of co-chairs for the group on ASGM, and we had consultations with the Bureau this morning, and so we have 2 names to propose to you for that group to begin working this morning at 10:30, and we gladly, I can gladly say that Ms. Rachel Burgess from Australia, a member of the Bureau, as well as Mr. Dr. Linroy Christian from Antigua and Barbuda, also a member of the Bureau, have agreed to facilitate that contact group. So the question is to you, can you accept that proposal from the chair? So we see no objection. Thank you very much, Ms. Burgess and Dr. Christian, for the role you're going to play in facilitating this group on ASGM. The group is to begin working this morning at 10:30. So now let's go to the contact group and other groups report. First, the group on program of work and budget is going to report back.
Muchas gracias. Muchas gracias, señor presidente.
Thank you very much, sir. The contact group met yesterday from 1 p.m. to 3 p.m. and then again from 7 p.m. to 9 p.m. We did have a first reading of the draft for decision with some proposals and alternatives, particularly on the possible use of the amount in the trust fund and the budget allocations to be prepared for 2028-2029. We also considered the scenario proposed for the biennium 2026-2027 with clarifications provided by the Secretariat. Some of the elements of the following biennium are going to require additional discussions, particularly those which are related to the staff cost estimates. Generally speaking, the group has made good progress over its first 2 days. Today, we shall hold a further 2 sessions in order to continue to work on the draft decision, revise the figures and analyze the budgetary implications of program decisions. We would like to cordially invite all the regional groups to participate actively in our discussions so as to guarantee that we have an inclusive, constructive and agreed outcome. We're also grateful to all those who participated in the meetings yesterday for their commitment and their cooperative attitude. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you very much, Miriam, for that report on the budget contact group. As our colleague said, the budget group will continue with its work, and we will look for a slightly more suitable room than room C, so that the group has a better chance of having successful discussions and a positive outcome to them. I'd now like to hear from the contact group on technical matters. Romania, the floor is yours.
Muchas gracias, señor presidente.
Thank you, Chairman.
The group met twice yesterday from 4:30 to 6 and then from 7:30 to 10. The group started with the second reading of the draft amendments to Part 1 and Part 2 of Annex A. Several square brackets were removed as a result of intensive discussion. By 6 p.m., the group reached an almost clean package of draft amendments to both parts, which accommodated most of the concern raised by the parties. At the evening session, the group attempted to reach a consensus involving informal consultations. However, I have to report that more time is needed to reach a final consensus. The group then considered the alternatives to VCM production. Building on a general exchange of views yesterday, the group started to discuss the draft decision contained in the CRP. Parties that expressed concern for the draft decision in CRP proposed an alternative text, and the proponent of the CRP proposed another text to accommodate that concern. However, the parties could not reach a consensus. The co-chairs are grateful for the constructive spirit, flexibility, and innovative ideas from the parties and observers, and we believe that further flexibility will help us to agree on draft decision. Also, in the name of David and myself, we would like to encourage parties to have bilaterals or small group discussions to ease our progress in this contact group. We are in your sense as to when we can meet again towards a consensus solution. Muchas gracias.
Muchas gracias, Claudia.
Thank you, Claudia.
I see that you're making a lot of progress. It's very promising, the work that you've been doing. I wonder if it's good for this group to meet tonight, perhaps only to touch on VCM. And so we will allocate time from 7 to 9 p.m. Is that agreeable to you and your co-chair, of course? We will post that information later on when we finish the report of the groups. So thank you for that information. I would like to turn to Brazil now. Brazil graciously facilitated a discussion on the CRP1 they introduced on financial mechanism. So you have the floor, sir.
Gracias, señor presidente.
Thank you, Chairman.
The group on the financial mechanism has met yesterday for the third time from 4:30 p.m. to 6 p.m. And we are pleased to inform that the group has successfully completed its work. Following very constructive and collaborative discussions, the group agreed on a draft decision that reflects a balanced and inclusive outcome. The text has been formally transmitted to the Secretariat so that the necessary steps can be taken for its consideration by the plenary. We are also pleased to note that the Secretariat has completed its clearance of the text, and we wish to express our appreciation for its excellent support in ensuring the use of United Nations consistent language while fully preserving the substance of the draft as agreed by the small group. We would like to thank all delegations for their constructive spirit and flexibility, and to thank you, Mr. President, for your continued guidance and confidence in the group's work. Muchas gracias.
Thank you very much, João, for those excellent news. I guess the Secretary will advise if the new version is uploaded on the website for everybody to take a look. Thank you for the work you have done. We have another group that is meeting with the leadership of Gabon that introduced a CRP4 on cosmetics. So if Gabon can report to us on the progress so far. Gabon, you have the floor, sir.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Mr. President. The group met yesterday between 1:30 and 3 p.m. in Room B. We reviewed CRP4 and we have made progress on the mandate that needs to take into account the concerns expressed by states parties in plenary. I am delighted to say on behalf of the group that we have just 2 or 3 things to finalize, and we have made quite a good progress. And we are delighted by the frank collaboration between parties. And we would just need 1 additional day to finalize our work. Thank you.
Merci, Serge. Well, thank you for the efforts being done. We have allocated for your group, Group 9, from 4 p.m. to 6 p.m. So 1,600 to 1,800 hours. Now I turn to Canada. Canada has also been the lead in the consultations on CRP2, on mercury compounds. You have the floor, Madam.
Thank you, Mr. President. Canada really appreciates the collaborative spirit that we've been enjoying with our party colleagues. Yesterday, Canada was able to make very good progress in having discussions with some of the parties who had expressed views and concerns regarding the CRP. Canada is still working through the list of parties who had expressed their views, and we hope to be able to come back to you with good news by the end of today. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Alison, for that information. Now we have the group on waste that has been working on CRP3, and the leader of that group is Japan. If Japan can take the floor to inform us on progress, please take the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. Pursuant to the mandate given to us yesterday, we have reached out to those delegations that expressed views and concerns regarding the CRP on waste, and also showed interest in providing input on text changes. While we have not yet received feedback from all interested delegations, one delegation has proposed significant changes. Specifically, the proposed changes include the deletion of operative paragraph 1, as well as the deletion of the request for the Secretariat to prepare potential elements for the requirement related to it. In order to facilitate further discussion, we'd like to convene an informal meeting that would bring together those delegations that have supported our CRP and shown interest in the proposed changes. For this purpose, Mr. President, we kindly request your assistance in allocating time for such an informal consultation. Finally, we would like to reiterate our sincere appreciation to our co-sponsors, Australia and Norway, for their continued support. In particular, we are especially grateful to Australia for its generous assistance in facilitating the informal consultations. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you very much, Japan. I will have consultations with the Secretariat in order to give you some time today to meet, and most probably, as you requested, what we will do is we will enlarge the group. We will seek a facilitator to help get a concrete result and consensus on document CRP3. So just give us a little bit of time after the reports to look into this possibility and come back to plenary for the information, or with the information rather. So we have a Friends of the President group on legal matters that has to do with the procedure for future requests of extension of exemptions. And I would like to invite Eva Salplachova, the ICC acting chair, to report on progress.
Can you hear me? The Friends of the President on Legal Matters met yesterday from 6:30 to 7:30. I am pleased to report that the group made a good and constructive start. The meeting began with a review of the group's mandate, as confirmed by the plenary in the morning session. In line with the mandate, the group considered the draft decision, the draft text prepared by the Secretariat upon the request of the facilitator on a possible process for submitting requests for extensions of exceptions from the phased-out dates listed in Annex A and Annex B, pursuant to the paragraph 6 of Article 6 of the Convention. As it was in the first opportunity of the group to review the draft text, members started by sharing their preliminary views. Some considered the text a good basis for further discussions, while others suggested refinements to the wording. Overall, the discussion was marked by the cooperative spirit, and participants expressed a shared commitment to finding a constructive way forward. The group then exchanged views on the scope of Article 6, Paragraph 6 of the Convention, particularly regarding whether subparagraph 6b would allow the COP to take into account information from the parties and the Secretariat on the availability of alternative products and processes. At this stage, the group did not reach agreed proposals, but identified key questions and areas requiring further clarification. Some common ground was found on the need to establish clear deadlines for the submissions of requests for extension of exemptions, and there was a general support for the group to meet again and further consider the text proposed by the Secretariat. The Secretariat has made the very first version of the draft text available through the group's intranet.
Thank you very much, Eva, for that report and for the progress that you have achieved in your group. We have allocated time for you to meet during lunchtime. You will see on the screen the exact hours, and I believe it will be the Bureau room, which is room 9. So in relation to the last report that we have heard, extension of exemptions, I will return now to part of this agenda item. And, but I want to begin the day with some small observations that I would like to do so we are all on the same page. So as I told you last night, today I will emphasize the time limit for interventions to 2 minutes. So we have made progress, but we need to speed up the process. We are lagging a bit behind, at least with 2 agenda items. So we need to catch up, and that will be done by limiting interventions. The aim is to finalize all CRPs by 6 p.m. So we have all the CRPs in languages by tomorrow's plenary. So now, before we go back to this agenda item on extension of exemptions, as I said before, I would like the Secretariat to post for all of you the contact rooms, the contact group rooms and times. Okay, here we have it. So for the budget group, we will try to seek the room in -1, and we will provide you with the number, because I am not sure if it's room 16 or room 4. I know they changed all the numbers, so we will make sure and we will tell you accordingly, but it's the room that it is in -4, in -1. And for the group on the waste consultations, we have room 11 and 12. That is located upstairs in level 2, and that's going to happen at 3 p.m. for 1 hour. We will announce the facilitator a little bit later on, so just give us some time to consult, and we will give that information to you according to the request we just heard from Japan. Let's go back to extension for exemptions. And as you recall, yesterday when we touched upon this agenda item, I tasked the 3 countries that are requesting extensions, namely Bangladesh, Thailand, and India in that particular order, to consult with the parties that were interested in engaging in the conversation. So I would like to invite those 3 countries to report to plenary and to the President on the progress made. Bangladesh, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, for giving me the opportunity. We are still talking with our different parties who has already mentioned about yesterday mentioned on the exemption issues, and we need, in fact, more time because we haven't finished discussing with African group and other countries. And I would also like to mention again that we are not asking for manufacturing or export. We are only asking for import exemption for 5 years, and it's only for batteries, pesticides. Out of 9 items which we submitted, we have talked with the capital, and now we reduced it only in 4 items: pesticides, batteries, relays and switches, and HVMPs. Those we don't have enough data to say that we are phasing out, and we are having enough justification on that because we only got 2 years. I'm mentioning again. So we need just more time to talk with other parties. I'm asking for more time. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you very much. Bangladesh, we will provide you with time, and if you need a room to hold those conversations, we can also provide that to you. Bangladesh?
Yes, please, if possible. Thank you so much.
Yes.
I appreciate the help of the Secretariat.
Thank you. Thailand or India? Thailand, please.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thailand wishes to reaffirm that our request for the extension of the exception period has been submitted in full compliance with Article 6, Paragraph 6 of the Minamata Convention, together with the supporting justification consistent with the subparagraph A to C. In this regard, and as provided for the Convention, the Conference of the Parties may decide to extend an exception for an additional 5 years. To further advance this discussion, Thailand held information consultations yesterday with a number of parties, including the United States, the European Union, and other countries that have also requested extensions. From this constructive exchange, we need more time for discussion. So Thailand wishes to emphasize that this extension remains essential to ensuring the effective and sustainable implementation of national measures aimed at phasing out mercury-added products. So indeed, the additional time will enable us to strengthen domestic capacity, facilitate the transition to mercury-free alternatives, and ensure that the phase-out process is both technically sound and economically viable. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you very much, Thailand, and thank you for your efforts. The same message goes to you. If you need some time or you need a room in order to have those consultations, please let us know. India, would you like to take the floor?
Thank you, Mr. President. After the plenary yesterday and as per your directions, we have met several parties yesterday on consultation and also trying to justify and explain the basis for our request for the extension. And we did hear quite a few voices of understanding from various parties, but then yes, we have not been able to discuss with all the parties, especially the African Union, we have not been able to discuss with them, and a few other parties, we would like to definitely have the discussion going on to have with them with respect to our request, and also to be able to explain the basis and the rationale that we have come up with respect to our request. Our request to the House here, and also while we discuss with various parties, is basically that this request is in light, it must be seen in light of the strong commitment to the objectives of the Convention and commitment of India to phasing out of these items that we have, and thus, and therefore, the support that is required in the transition that India seeks for the next 5 years. So this is our appeal from the floor here, Mr. President, through you, and we look forward to the support from all the parties and also your support in having this particular extension. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much, India, for that report. Also, if you need some more time or any other support, please let us know. So we will reconvene to look at this item later during the COP, and I just give my appreciation to you for the report. So let's go now to item 4G, Implementation and Compliance Committee. The Implementation and Compliance Committee is established by Article 15 to promote the implementation and review of compliance with all provisions of the Convention. The committee examines both individual and systemic issues of implementation and compliance and can make recommendations as appropriate to the Conference of the Parties. In the absence of the current and former chairs of the committee, I now invite the current and former vice chairs and rapporteur of the committee, Ms. Eva Salplachova from Czechia and Musa Kusumila Gunila from the United Republic of Tanzania, respectively, to introduce the committee's report on its work in the intersessional period between COP5 and COP6. Ms. Eva Salplachova, ICC Acting Chair and Rapporteur, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would like to invite Musa Kuzumula Nugila from the United Republic of Tanzania, who acted as a rapporteur during both meetings of the committee held during the intersessional period between COP5 and COP6, to present the work of the committee. Thank you.
Tanzania.
Thank you, Mr. President. I welcome the opportunity to present the report of the committee's work during the intersessional period between COP5 and COP6. The committee met twice in the intersessional period. That is, the first one was online on the 24th and 25th September 2024, and in person from 18th to 20th February 2025 in Geneva. Please allow me to recognize that Aniki Bodwin from Canada, who presided over both meetings, was unable to attend COP6. At its 6th and 7th meetings, the committee considered the written submission by Mexico with respect to its compliance pursuant to paragraph 4A of Article 15. The written submission related to paragraph 2 of Article 5 and Part 1 of Annex B to the Convention, which require each party to not allow, by taking appropriate measures, the use of mercury or mercury compounds in chlor-alkali production by 2025. Mexico indicated in its written submission that, despite ongoing efforts to gradually eliminate the use of mercury in the chlor-alkali sector, it will not be able to comply with its obligations. At its 6th meeting in September 2024, at which Mexico presented its submission, the committee adopted decision IC-6/1 on the matter, inviting Mexico to elaborate, with the support of the Secretariat, for consideration by the committee at its next meeting, a strategy for achieving compliance with its obligations under paragraph 2 of Article 5 and Part 1 of Annex B to the Convention. Mexico submitted a strategy on the 2nd January 2025 and participated in the committee's 7th meeting to present the strategy and answer questions from the committee. In decision IC-6/2, adopted at its 7th meeting, the committee expressed its appreciation for the cooperation of Mexico with the committee and for its commitment to ensure the implementation of its obligations under the Convention, welcomes the transmission by Mexico of the strategy, and recommended that Mexico implement such a strategy to achieve compliance with its obligation as paragraph 2 of Article 5 and Part 1 of Annex B to the Convention by 2028. The committee decided to keep the matter relevant to the submission from Mexico under review. At its 6th and 7th meeting, the committee also considered issues of implementation and compliance on the basis of the second short national reports, which were to be submitted parties by 31st December 2023 for the reported period 1st of January 2021 up to 31st December 2022. Pursuant to paragraph 25B of the committee's terms of reference, the Secretariat completed a review of the submitted national reports and prepared a report for consideration by the committee, which included information about parties' reporting performance and identification of particular issues that had emerged from the second short national reports. The committee considered the Secretariat's report and reached the agreement on one recommendation on primary mercury mining, as well as on conclusions with respect to the following: A, reporting performance; B, primary mercury mining, that is question 3.1 of the reporting format; C, stocks and resources, that is question 3.3 of the reporting format; D, mercury trade, that is question 3.5 of the reporting format; E, mercury waste, that is question 11.2 of the reporting format. The committee's recommendation on primary mercury mining is set out in document UNEP/MC/COP.6/5, in which a footnote identifies the related draft decision text for consideration by Conference of Parties at its 6th meeting. Finally, I would like to recognize and recommend the dedication of all members of the committee in reviewing and commenting on the extensive documentation that was provided by the Secretariat. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you very much, Mr. Gunila from Tanzania, and also to Eva for the report, and to the Implementation and Compliance Committee at large for the valuable contribution to the substantive discussions across the agenda items. So now we open the floor on the item of Implementation and Compliance Committee for interventions. The floor is open. Mexico, first in line.
Muchas gracias, señor.
Thank you very much, President. This statement will be very brief. I simply wanted, on behalf of my country, to express our gratitude for the support and the guidance we have received from the Implementation and Compliance Committee. Mexico is aware of our obligations, and that is why we are sparing no effort in order to try and deal with what remains of our chloroalkali plant. Yesterday in Room B at 6 p.m., colleagues from the company and from the Environment Ministry, this is today, will be making a presentation on the process of conversion, and we do hope that any parties interested in listening to what they have to say will come. We are aware that this is a challenge we have to face, not only in Mexico, it's coming up for other states as well, so it is important. Thank you. Thank you, Mexico, for that information.
The Union has the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. The European Union and its member states welcome the report from the Implementation and Compliance Committee, along with its valuable recommendations. We believe that the committee's recommendations give valuable guidance for the considerations of the COP under many agenda items, and we thank the Secretariat for incorporating the recommendations into various working documents. The EU and its member states highly appreciate the work of the committee and consider it has a central role in the further development and implementation of the Convention. Thank you.
Thank you very much. To the European Union, Sierra Leone has the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. The African region wishes to commend the Implementation and Compliance Committee for its rigorous intersessional work and for developing the comprehensive recommendations. These efforts are invaluable in ensuring that the Minamata Convention operates on a foundation of shared responsibility and effectiveness. The African region firmly believes that effective national reporting carried out in accordance with Article 21 is the essential bridge connecting parties to the Secretariat. This crucial process allows for targeted technical assistance, facilitates gap analysis, and ultimately enhances the full implementation of the Convention across all regions. Article 15 of the Convention establishes the Implementation and Compliance Committee as a vital subsidiary body tasked with promoting and reviewing compliance with all provisions for the Convention. We reaffirm the committee's critical mandates to examine both individual and systemic issues of implementation and compliance, and to deliver recommendations to the Conference of the Party. Mr. President, in this spirit of robust and effective implementation, the African region stands committed to engaging in further constructive discussions regarding, regarding submissions for exemptions, which the region thinks should be handled by ICC. We see this process as a practical and necessary application of the Article 15 mechanism, ensuring that all aspects of the conventions are implemented in a manner that is fair, consistent, and environmentally sound. Our region looks forward to working collaboratively with the ICC and other regions to ensure these discussions contribute to the Convention's overall goal. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you very much, Sierra Leone. On behalf of the African region, Indonesia has the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. Indonesia appreciates the Implementation and Compliance Committee for its constructive and comprehensive report, as well as its recommendations. On reporting obligations, Indonesia has submitted our second short national report and are preparing our full national report for submission by the end of 2025. Indonesia values the Secretariat's continued support for parties to meet their reporting obligations. On mercury minings, stocks, and trade, Indonesia continues to make progress while addressing persistent issues such as illegal mining and illicit mercury trade. In collaboration with the Ministry of Environment of Japan, we reported on the Bali Declaration implementation, in which we have identified key concerns: trade data gaps, online mercury sales, illegal cinnabar mining, limited monitoring, and the need for better management of confiscated mercury. We believe stronger cooperation is essential to address the issues. We encourage sharing experiences, improve regulations and enforcement, and enhance capacity for law enforcement. Regional and international collaboration will be key to tackling illegal mercury trade. Indonesia remains committed to strengthening implementation of the Convention and stands ready to share experiences and best practices with fellow parties. I thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you very much, Indonesia. Colombia.
Gracias. Thank you, sir. The Colombian delegation would like to express gratitude to the Implementation and Compliance Committee for submitting its report, and we're also grateful for the recommendations made to parties. We greatly appreciate the constructive technical work done by the committee because it contributes to building confidence and trust and cooperation between parties under the Minamata Convention. We're particularly happy that as part of this facilitative, not punitive measure, a party is able to contribute information freely on a situation of non-compliance. This is a significant step forward in building the compliance system and promoting transparency and dialogue, which all lead to realistic and acceptable solutions to an issue. We appreciate these mechanisms in all multilateral environmental agreements because, as I say, they enhance transparency and cooperation, and anything that does helps us to make progress in meeting and building on our international commitments. We reiterate our support, which we also offer to other parties when we have to tackle common and shared challenges. Cooperation in doing so will benefit us and the multilateral system of environmentally related treaties and agreements. Thank you.
I have no more requests from the floor from parties. Yes, I do. Saudi Arabia. Just push the button.
Your Excellency, the President, thank you for giving the floor to the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. The KSA would like to thank and appreciate the ICC for their detailed report and its content, the recommendations, the constructive recommendations that are conducive to the better implementation of the provisions of the Minamata Convention and holding states to their commitments. We would like also to thank them for the recommendation with the primary mining of mercury and the illegal trades, and as well as the waste management, which are also important for the implementation of the convention. We would like to see further progress in the work of the ICC in the future and to build on the confidence-building measures between parties. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Saudi Arabia. Now I turn to Iran.
Thank you, Mr. President. My delegation values the report of the Implementation and Compliance Committee and its recommendation. We recognize the crucial role of data in evaluating effectiveness and note the capacity gaps that persist in many developing countries. We call for enhanced financial and technical support to strengthen national monitoring system, training by Basel and Stockholm regional centers, and transparent data sharing platforms, ensuring reasonable access to resources and taking into consideration challenges related to unilateral restriction and lack of technology access must remain a priority. I thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you very much. Iran. Now I open the floor to observers. I have no requests from the floor. So thank you to all the interventions, and we see some support for the recommendations that were outlined in the report of the Compliance Committee, and also these guidelines that were offered from the interventions from the floor. This concludes this agenda item. We now turn to agenda item 4H, national reporting. So I invite the Secretariat to introduce the document under this agenda item. Richard?
Thank you very much, Mr. President. One working document with 2 information documents have been prepared for COP6 on national reporting. Document 15 includes in Section 2 the Secretariat's periodic report to the Conference of the Parties based on the information received pursuant to Articles 15 and 21, and prepared also in pursuant to paragraph E of Article 24. It also includes the reporting performance of the second short national reports, update on the reporting guidance and other measures to support parties in national reporting, and a timetable for analyzing the national reports for the 7th meeting of the Conference of Parties. The annex to document 15 sets out a draft decision for the consideration of the COP. To complement this document, I also wish to draw your attention to information document 20, which contains the Secretariat's report on the second short national reports under Article 21 of the Minamata Convention. The information contained in INF 20 reflects the situation until 31 May 2025. The submitted national reports are considered by the Secretariats to be complete, are available on the Convention website. Information document 21 contains the updated guidance for completing the national reporting format, which relates to the amendments to the reporting format which the COP adopted in MC 5/13. The updates are indicated in the underlined text in the document. That'll be all on my part. Thank you very much, Mr. President.
Thank you, Richard. So I note the strong reporting rate of 86% for the second short reports as of 31 of May 2025. So we welcome this achievement by parties. The conference has before one report on national reporting, namely document 6/15. A draft decision on national reporting is included in the annex to document 15. In its consideration of the draft decision, the Conference of the Parties is invited to take note of document 14, the report of the Implementation and Compliance Committee, which includes this committee's recommendation. The floor is open for intervention to parties on this agenda item. The European Union.
Thank you, Mr. President. The European Union and its member states would like to thank the Minamata Secretariat for their efforts in assisting parties in fulfilling their reporting obligations, particularly through the innovative use of online reporting platforms and the provision of reporting guidance and video tutorial, which helps parties to submit their national reports. We welcome the high reporting rate of the second short national report. The European Union and its member states would like to emphasize the importance of the analysis of the second round of national reporting being available for COP7. While recognizing the intersessional period might be shorter than normal, we do not think it needs mentioning in the decision and propose to delete the text in square brackets in paragraph 2 of the draft decision. In paragraph 2, we also would like to suggest to change request parties to submit their national report in timely manner to invite parties to submit their national report in timely manner. The European Union and its member states support the call to parties that have received consent to export mercury to parties and/or to non-parties to provide copies of the consent form to the Secretariat to show that the relevant requirements of Article 3 have been met. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The European Union. Sierra Leone.
Thank you, Mr. President. The African region reaffirms the importance of timely and comprehensive national reporting as the backbone of transparency and informed decision-making under the Convention, as well as its importance in the effectiveness evaluation of the Convention across all its provisions. The African region commends the Secretariat for preparing documents UNEP/MC/COP.6/15 and for maintaining the online reporting system and guidance that supports parties in fulfilling their obligations. We also note with appreciation that Africa achieved one of the highest reporting rates globally, reflecting our region's strong commitment to the Convention. The African region nevertheless acknowledges the challenges faced by parties, including the need for technical capacity, data collection tools, and financial resources to meet the upcoming deadline for the second full national reports due by 31st December 2025. We appreciate support in this regard. With respect to the amendment of Annex A, Part 2, adopted in Decision MC5/4, requiring parties that have not yet phased out dental amalgam to submit a national action plan or a report every 4 years. The African region stresses that this new obligation should be implemented in a practical but flexible manner. The amendment entered into force on 25th April 2024, but the second full national report covered the period 1st January 2021 to 31st December 2024. Parties therefore face difficulties generating data for a period that largely precedes the amendment's entry into force. To bridge this gap, the African region proposes that parties be given the option to submit their first national action plan on dental amalgam either together with the second full national report by 31st December 2025 or alternatively with the third short national report by 31st December 2027. This flexibility will enable all parties to comply meaningfully with the new requirements. We request the Secretariat to develop National Action Plan development guidance to phase out dental amalgam within the indicated timeline of 31st December 2027. The African region also supports the Secretariat proposal to continue improving the online reporting tool to ensure language accessibility as well as to collect examples of best practices in reporting on informal or illegal mercury activities. These efforts will enhance data quality and comparability as well as improving the effectiveness evaluation of the Convention. It will also enhance the usefulness of national reports for the Implementation and Compliance Committee. Without preempting on the outcome of the contact group discussions to amend Annex A, Part 1, with a phase-out date of dental amalgam as proposed, parties should not be encouraged to wait until the next full reporting round due by 31st December 2029 to submit a national action plan or a report. This will render the amendment insignificant. In conclusion, Mr. President, the African region urges parties to reaffirm their commitments to timely implementation of the reporting obligations and ensure that national reports capture all key elements of implementation that includes the phase-out of dental amalgam, management of mercury waste, trade control measures, and actions addressing artisanal and small-scale mining. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you very much. The Africa region, Uganda has the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. Uganda aligns itself with the position of Africa region on the present note as articulated by Sierra Leone. Mr. President, Uganda wishes in a special way to recognize all efforts, most especially from the Secretariat of the Minamata Convention on Mercury, amidst limited financial resources, in providing reporting guidance and other measures to support parties in national reporting and for synthesizing the reported on information in forms that easily guide decision-making, especially at country level. Mr. President, whereas majority of parties fulfill their national reporting obligations, Uganda notes that the reporting rate is still slow. Mr. President, management of mercury at the national level calls for a whole of society and whole of government approach, and the same applies to national reporting. Uganda therefore wishes to request the COP to call upon the GEF to consider allocating targeted financing towards national reporting to enable parties initiate sectoral collaborations at the national level, leading to the development of national reports. Mr. President, targeted financing by the GEF towards national reporting is already taking place for other multilateral environmental agreements, including the Convention on Biological Diversity and its protocols, and we therefore believe the same can happen for the Minamata Convention on Mercury national reporting. Thank you so much, Mr. President.
Thank you very much. The United States.
Thank you very much. We would like to take this opportunity to thank the Secretariat for its work to ensure the transparency, clarity, accuracy, and ease of national reporting. We know that there is a lot of work and a lot of documents that support us as we strive for successful and comprehensive national reporting. As we've noted, the United States continues to place a high priority on the obligations related to the reduction and elimination of primary mercury mining. To this end, we are concerned with the rise in the production of mercury from mining operations as provided in national reports, and would like to again express our willingness and interest to support the efforts of those parties to address these issues. With respect to mercury supply and stocks, we recognize that the ICC has noted that in many cases, the parties are using outdated information from their initial MIAs, initial Minamata assessments submitted in 2018. We support the activities related to improve that data, but believe that the convention's limited funding should be directed to those parties where significant stocks and supply issues have been identified through their national reporting, or those parties that are emerging in national reporting as destinations of concern for mercury from formal or informal primary mercury mining or trade. We also have some small edits to paragraph 5B of the draft decision to, in a time of limited resources, focus changes on concerns that are raised by parties and are an impediment to national reporting. Finally, with respect to the updates to the online reporting tool to account for the amendments to the reporting format that were agreed to at COP5 and provided in INF 21, the United States appreciates the updates but has a number of small questions or suggested edits that we will submit in writing to the Secretariat. Perhaps going forward, we might recommend that such updates be made available for review and comment, and perhaps that could be addressed in paragraph 5C of the draft decision. As noted, we will submit our suggested changes to the Secretariat in writing immediately. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Norway has the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. Norway acknowledges the high rate of reporting on the second short national report and encourage all parties to submit their second full national report later this year. Reporting is important for the effectiveness evaluation process that will continue towards COP7. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Norway, Nigeria has the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. Nigeria aligns with the position of the African region, and we appreciate the Secretariat for the good efforts in collating national reporting and the Implementation and Compliance Committee for their hard work and recommendations that will further improve communication between parties and the Secretariat of Minamata Convention on Mercury. Considering that effective national reporting will bridge the gaps between parties and the Secretariat and will further enhance the implementation of the Convention. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you very much. Nigeria, Ecuador.
Gracias, Presidente.
Thank you, sir. Ecuador has the honor of making this statement on the members of the Andean community. On the issue 4H, which we are discussing, we should like to emphasize, first of all, that our countries have complied with the timely submission of the second short national report, and we are grateful to the Secretariat for its report and the information it's given us under Articles 15 and 29 of the Convention. The Andean Mercury Observatory has been revising its guidelines on MSC 513, specifically with respect to 13.5, and we are concerned that some members in their short reports have not dealt with illicit trade or smuggling in and of mercury. We believe it is important that the updated guidelines from the Secretariat include explicit options related to these issues, which will make it easier for states party to provide the relevant information in their national reports. Given that one of the functions of our observatory is to collate and issue reliable, checked information on mercury in the region, we believe that this will be essential to help us to develop the appropriate policies and better regulate and cooperate with other competent bodies. Having these explicit options on these issues in our national reports would help our observatory to engage in better traceability of information and contribute to a better understanding of illicit flows of mercury and the impact thereof. Thank you. Thank you, Ecuador. Ecuador was the last speaker from a state party, and I should now like to give the floor to IPEN.
Thank you, Mr. President. We welcome that some national reports under Article 21 show progress in phasing out mercury, including prohibiting its use in ASGM. But challenges remain. Parties must fully prohibit mercury in ASGM, set and enforce clear deadlines, and tackle smuggling and informal trade. Stronger commitments backed by legislation, enforcement, transparency, and publicly accessible data are essential. We urge parties that national reports should go beyond the template of compliance summaries. The report must include 1. Measures for environmentally sound management, storage, final disposal of mercury waste, and plans to characterize, identify, and clean up of contaminated sites. 2. Actions taken to prevent and address illegal trade and smuggling. 3. Clear timelines for mercury phase-out and ASGM, and support for mercury-free methods, including funding, technology transfer, and capacity building. 4. Meaningful participation of affected communities, women, indigenous peoples, and civil society. And 5. Collaboration with other parties to establish a regional task force for cross-border cooperation, information exchange, and enforcement. We also call on parties to provide civil society access to these reports to verify progress, share on-the-ground data, and identify gaps. Transparency and inclusivity are vital to build trust and ensure no one is left behind in the journey to a mercury-free future. Let us turn reporting into real action, transforming commitments on paper into lasting protection for people, communities, and our planet. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Aipen. Now, Women's Caucus has the floor.
Thank you, President. I'm speaking on behalf of the Women's Caucus for Minamata and Mercury. We welcome the fact that in line with paragraph 4 of decision 5/15, the Secretariat measured the distribution of reporting officers to assess the meaningful participation of women. It is encouraging to see that out of 110 reporting officers, 58 were female and 52 were male. However, achieving gender balance alone is not sufficient to fully capture the scope of Goal 8 of the Minamata Gender Action Plan, which aims to ensure gender issues inclusion in Article 21 national reports. We therefore recommend the parties to report on gender-related activities and that the Secretariat analyze and evaluate them. Furthermore, we would like to encourage parties to involve gender experts in the preparation and implementation of the national action plans as highlighted under Goal 9 of the Gender Action Plan. The Women's Caucus stands ready to support you in these efforts. Finally, to continue the discussion on gender mainstreaming in national reporting, we warmly invite you to our Women's Caucus Lounge event today at 1 p.m., room 4, level -1. Thank you, President.
Thank you very much for that last intervention. So what I heard from parties is commending the high rate of reporting and highlighting the importance of national reporting for the work of the convention and appreciating the support for the Secretariat providing to parties to facilitate this effort. I also heard Uganda calling on the GEF to support parties in meeting their reporting obligations, something that we note. We also heard the EU, the first to intervene on some minor amendments to the proposed decision. On paragraph 2, if I recall correctly. Also, we heard the proposal by the Africa region to introduce new text related to report on national action plans on dental amalgam, and then proposals by the United States on paragraph 5B and 5C, as well as to some updates to the reporting guidance. So my proposal is to request to these parties to write to the Secretariat with those amendments And those additions, and once we have them on board, the Secretariat would upload a new document with a new updated document in the form of a CRP to consider at a later stage. Is that proposal agreeable to everybody? I see no objection. It is so decided. That concludes the agenda item on national reporting. Now we go to effectiveness evaluation. Okay, we will skip effectiveness evaluation because we have a report by our colleague Linroy from Antigua and Barbuda. Our colleague Linroy actually is co-chairing the working group, the contact group rather, on ASGM. So we will take that item in the afternoon when he's available to provide us with that report. 1 second. All right, so with your indulgence, we will move effectiveness evaluation back to the beginning of the afternoon plenary, and now we will begin discussions on agenda item J and I, cross-cutting matters. Implementation of decision MC5/1, the effects of mercury pollution on indigenous peoples and on local communities. I will invite the Secretariat to introduce this agenda item.
Thank you, Mr. President. Working document 6/17 presents information on activities undertaken by the Secretariat to support the implementation of Decision 5/1. Specifically, Section A of the document includes information on activities aimed at engaging indigenous peoples' organizations in dialogue on the impacts of mercury on human health and the environment, and to inform the Convention's governance structure and processes. The section also identifies obstacles to the effective participation of indigenous peoples in the work of the UN organizations and highlights those that require attention in the work of the Convention. A dedicated funding mechanism is proposed to support the Secretariat in raising sufficient funding in a timely manner for indigenous peoples' participation in regional meetings, COP, and other possible meetings. The establishment of a mechanism would not have any impact on the existing trust funds and how the Secretariats can receive voluntary funding. Section B provides updates on efforts to promote and enhance the Indigenous Peoples Platform. This platform started as a simple Facebook page and has now transitioned to a dedicated web page housed on the Minamata Convention website. The current Indigenous Peoples Platform serves as an information hub offering curated updates on activities and resources from Indigenous peoples and their representatives and organizations. Finally, Section C summarizes the report on the needs and priorities of Indigenous peoples and local communities in relation to health, livelihood, cultural, and knowledge-related impacts of mercury. The report has been prepared by the Secretariat in response to the request in Decision MC5/1 and is presented in full in Information Document 24. The annex to Document 17 sets out a draft decision for consideration by the Conference of Parties. We would like to extend our appreciation to the various organizations that supported the work during the intercessional period, particularly the Office of the United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights, as well as the JEF Secretariat, and to the Government of Finland for providing generous funding and in-kind contributions to support participation of Indigenous peoples in this meeting. Thank you very much, Mr. President.
Thank you very much, Richard, for that introduction. And as agreed by the Bureau, the Indigenous peoples have the floor.
Thank you, Chair, for acknowledging the Indigenous peoples and providing the space to speak. We thank the Secretariat for introducing the resolution document, strengthening the effective engagement of Indigenous peoples. We appreciate the positive and progressive initiative and action of the Secretariat. The recognition of our rights as Indigenous peoples is a monumental step forward for this convention, which failed to recognize us as Indigenous peoples, instead referring to us as Indigenous communities. We welcome this step forward and offer our sincere gratitude to the parties, agencies, and other donors that supported Indigenous participation here at COP6. For many of us, Indigenous peoples, it began 533 years ago with the discovery of gold in our lands and territories, and what followed included violence, displacement, and death. The hunger of obtaining gold continues to expand and threaten our lives today. We fear for our future generations if we do not act now. We would like to announce the establishment of the International Indigenous Peoples Forum on Mercury, a formal caucus that will allow us to continue engaging in intersectional work, regional processes, and committees. We will include the participation of all 7 sociocultural regions. We also encourage other groups to establish their own distinct caucuses. We also support the contributions to the platform of Indigenous peoples and the establishment of the consultative group that will be working alongside the governance of Indigenous Peoples Forum. We must be self-organized and establish our roles and functions as Indigenous peoples' constituency, and we look forward to the support of the Secretariat. In the process of securing funding, we call for support that includes transparency, inclusive monitoring, and ethics founded on upholding Indigenous rights and collective benefits, and to increase the strengthen the capacity of Minamata Secretariat. We call on parties to uphold the UN Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples, including our right to self-organize, and look forward to working closely in the establishment and functioning of the Indigenous Peoples Platform. In closing, we thank you again for your efforts and support and look forward to future collaboration. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much to the Indigenous Peoples Organization for sharing your perspective. Now the floor is open to parties to make interventions under this agenda item. First in line is Guatemala. Oh, no. The first in line is Canada.
Thank you, Mr. President. As we have heard from many interventions already, due to their reciprocal relationship with ecosystems and high exposure to risks, Indigenous peoples bear a disproportionate burden of the effects of mercury pollution, climate change, environmental degradation, biodiversity loss, and unsustainable development practices. The United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples provides minimum standards of a rights-based engagement with Indigenous peoples, promoting their full and effective participation in all matters of concern, including in relation to lands, waters, territories, health, culture, spirituality, governance, and self-determination. Within this context, we recall that parties to the Minamata Convention recognized the need to support Indigenous participation in projects, programs, and meetings under the Convention in Decision MC5/1. However, barriers to the effective engagement of Indigenous peoples have been noted in both documents prepared by the Secretariat, work of other UN organizations, including the Human Rights Council, as well as the interventions of Indigenous peoples. Canada notes the work of the Secretariat to identify the needs and priorities of Indigenous peoples and appreciates their initiative to begin addressing barriers to the full and effective participation of Indigenous peoples. Canada also appreciates the contribution of the Government of Finland to the Special Trust Fund to support Indigenous peoples' participation at this COP, demonstrating that support can be provided through existing financial mechanisms and that no new mechanisms are required. Addressing barriers to the full and effective participation of Indigenous peoples is not an easy task, and we understand that there may need to be some additional consultations with Indigenous peoples to find the best way forward, as outlined in the draft decision in document MC6/17. Recognizing the large number and diversity of Indigenous peoples who have expressed a high level of interest in participating in the convention processes and programs, Canada sees the value in establishing an initial ad hoc advisory group comprised of Indigenous peoples whose members can provide practical advice or guidance that could be considered in undertaking engagement of Indigenous peoples under the Convention. In conclusion, Canada supports the intention behind the draft decision prepared by the Secretariat in document 17 and would like to suggest some improvements. We are open to working in a small group to make these changes. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Canada, the European Union has the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. The European Union and its member states acknowledge that Indigenous peoples, as well as local communities, are among the first to face the serious effects resulting from mercury pollution. We welcome and support the important role of Indigenous peoples, as well as local communities, in achieving the objective of the Minamata Convention, and would like to thank the Secretariat for the work done to implement the decision from COP5 and welcome the activities undertaken. Several funding possibilities exist to strengthen and support effective engagement and participation of parties and observers, including Indigenous peoples, that also can cover the work and meetings of the Minamata Convention. In the proposed draft decision, the European Union and its member states therefore do not support the creation of a new funding mechanism. Furthermore, the proposal to create an interim ad hoc advisory group is not clear at this stage, in particular regarding its potential impact on budget. Therefore, we have some concerns with the draft decision in its current form and stand ready to participate in further deliberations. We support enhancing and improving participation of and communication with representatives from Indigenous peoples as well as local communities as agreed at COP5, but have concerns with how this is addressed in the draft decision and would welcome further consideration on the way forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much, the European Union, for that statement. Next in line is Australia.
Thank you, Mr. President, and thank you to the Secretariat for their helpful introduction, including on the nature of the proposed improvements to the supporting architecture for facilitating the engagement of Indigenous peoples in this convention. In addition, we very much welcome the announcement just now from the Indigenous peoples organisations on the establishment of the International Indigenous Peoples Forum on Mercury. Australia strongly recognises the importance of ensuring Indigenous voices are meaningfully represented in our collective efforts to protect human health and the environment from mercury pollution. Indigenous peoples in Australia and globally possess deep cultural, scientific and technical knowledge that is essential to informed decision-making on the issues at hand. In line with the UN Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples, we affirm that Indigenous peoples have the right to participate in decision-making. We support the ongoing efforts to strengthen Indigenous engagement in the Minamata Convention, and we would welcome further discussions to refine this draft decision. We also request that Indigenous voices are included in any further deliberations to ensure appropriate, lasting and practical outcomes. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Australia. We have Colombia.
Thank you, sir. We would like to thank the Secretariat for the preparation of the relevant documents under this agenda item, and especially for having prepared the draft decision under consideration. Colombia welcomes the inclusion of an area of work on indigenous peoples in this convention, starting with the historic decision MC51 at the last COP. Strengthening the participation and involvement of indigenous peoples is essential because the indiscriminate use of mercury in the illegal mining of gold pollutes the rivers, the soil, and threatens the culture of indigenous peoples. The effects are silent, but they are devastating. They lead to neurological problems, congenital health problems, and displacement of peoples and the uprooting of their culture. Exposure to mercury can lead, for example, to the total disappearance of things which are simply not replaceable. A recent study by the Apoporis National Park of communities living there, including the Mistermosa and others, have shown that 23 micrograms per gram of mercury are polluting the area. And the figure found in that community is the highest in any indigenous community in Latin America. 93% of people checked are receiving pollution from mercury at a level higher than the WHO stipulates as the maximum. And there are clear traces of neurological problems as well, which show the damage being done to the peoples and the environment of the Amazon only too eloquently. For this reason, we believe that fully involving indigenous peoples in our work is crucial. You can't have any effective government policy without dialogue between people from different cultural backgrounds. The voices of indigenous peoples must be heard and their rights must be practiced and protected. We need to have participatory consultation on these matters so that indigenous peoples can be protected and their lands saved. We would like to see approaches like we take in Colombia included in the Minamata Convention, because that would guarantee their more active involvement not only in discussions but in practical work done under the Convention. It's not just the interests of the indigenous peoples we're talking about. Some governments can actually see beyond industrialization to the detriment of indigenous peoples and can work together with them. Thank you. Thank you, Colombia, for that contribution. I call on Indonesia.
Thank you, Chair. Indonesia takes notes the draft decision and we view the importance of including the reference to local communities alongside indigenous people throughout the document, as it is an agreed language in many multilateral arrangements. We believe it is essential to ensure equal recognition of local communities who also face disproportionate impacts from mercury pollution as instituted in the Bali Declaration. We wish also to highlight that not all countries formally acknowledge the concept of indigenous people in their national laws. Therefore, ensuring the inclusion of local communities is critical to maintaining broad relevance and equitable access in all regions. I thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. The United States.
Thank you, Mr. President. Like others, the United States has concerns about the draft decision, including the language that seems to suggest the establishment of a new funding mechanism. We also believe this proposed mechanism may be duplicative of the existing special trust fund of the Convention. Therefore, we look forward to further discussions in a contact group. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you for your brevity. Mexico.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. We would like to thank the Secretariat for submitting the document, and particularly for their constant work to make the participation of indigenous peoples in the work of this convention closer and more visible. We also acknowledge the valuable contributions made by those indigenous peoples who, through their vision of the world, their knowledge and their close link to the territories on which they live, have considerably enriched the drawing up of the convention and these ongoing discussions. Mexico always informs, consults and supports with its indigenous communities when it comes to environmental issues, including artisanal mining, chemical waste, and protecting the lands on which they live. We reiterate our commitment to a fair, equitable, and culturally appropriate process of transition which will respect human rights and the diversity of our communities. We agree with a great deal of what has been said here about the importance of guaranteeing full, effective, and significant participation by indigenous peoples in the work of this convention. And to this end, we think we should consider more viable, sustainable, and effective approaches than the setting up of a fund. What we need is to provide lasting, transparent, and impactful participation by indigenous peoples and local communities, while at the same time avoiding a proliferation of funds and groups. Mexico will be ready to participate with other parties in improving this draft decision so that the final decision will be something that can be implemented and applied and which reflects the constructive spirit in which discussions have taken place here, as well as taking into account the contribution of the Secretariat and the enormous contribution that indigenous peoples have made to this convention. Thank you. Thank you, Mexico. I call on the Brazilian delegation.
Mr. President, Brazil is honored to take the floor under this important agenda item on behalf of 391 indigenous peoples, 150 of which completely isolated and with no contact with the external world. We wish to recall the historic importance of Decision 5/1 adopted at COP5 on the basis of a proposal originally presented by Brazil, which was instrumental in securing formal recognition of the vulnerability and central role of indigenous peoples in the implementation of the Minamata Convention. That decision constituted a political and legal milestone in strengthening the participation of these populations in the Convention's governance and has guided subsequent efforts to broaden their participation and amplify their voices, in line with the principles of inclusion, equity, and cultural diversity. Indigenous peoples play an essential role in safeguarding ecosystems, preserving traditional knowledge, and defending the well-being of present and future generations. At the same time, they are amongst the most severely affected by mercury contamination, particularly in areas impacted by artisanal and small-scale gold mining and illegal mining activities, which, with profound consequences for their health, food security, traditional livelihoods, and cultural identity. Protecting indigenous peoples from mercury exposure is therefore a moral, social, and environmental imperative and a key element of the effective implementation of this convention. Brazil supports the proposals to establish a voluntary funding mechanism dedicated to indigenous peoples, as well as the creation of an interim ad hoc advisory group as set out in the draft decision before us. These measures represent concrete progress to ensuring a financial sustainability and institutional continuity for indigenous participation, reinforcing the Convention's commitment to environmental justice and the diversity of voices in decision-making. In this context, Brazil also underscores the importance of the principles of self-nomination by indigenous representatives, consistent with good practices under other MEAs and United Nations human rights instruments, while respecting national frameworks and engagement mechanisms. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Brazil. And that concludes the intervention by parties. Now we go to observers. The first in line is Guatemala.
Muchas gracias, señor.
Thank you very much, President. This is Guatemala's first contribution to the meeting, so we'd like to express our thanks to the government of Switzerland for her kind hospitality, to the Secretariat for the excellent preparation and organization of this meeting, and to you, Chairman, for your outstanding chairmanship of the work. In order to save time, we shall make a brief statement. A full text will, however, be sent to the Secretariat to be encoded in the records. Guatemala is participating here as an observer, but nonetheless welcomes with some satisfaction the progress which has been made by the Secretariat on following up to implementation of Decision 5/1. We support efforts to expand the participation of indigenous peoples in the implementation of programs and projects under the Minamata Convention because their knowledge and their close relationship with the ecosystem contributes to effective and inclusive implementation of action to reduce and to eliminate the use of mercury. We welcome improvements to the Indigenous Peoples Platform too, access to information on emissions and releases of mercury will help indigenous peoples to be more aware of the effects of mercury pollution on their environment and on the health of their people. And that's of vital importance in helping them to respond to the problem, promoting their informed participation in decision-making and guaranteeing protection of their lands and communities against mercury is essential. We want to participate constructively here, and with that in mind, we'd like to express some concern about the inclusion of the term local communities in the Convention documents. We think it will be important to ensure that the use of this term does not lead to erroneous interpretation which might reduce or weaken the specific protection which international treaties and agreements give to indigenous peoples in the recognition of their rights in their particular circumstances. President, Guatemala shares the concern about challenges in guaranteeing the effective participation of indigenous peoples in multilateral fora, especially limited financial and logistic support, language barriers, administrative red tape concerning travel and accreditation, all of which contribute to making full participation by indigenous peoples that much more difficult. Thank you. Thank you, Guatemala, for your contribution. I will now turn the floor to other observers. And the first on my screen is the Asian Indigenous Peoples Pact. Go ahead, please.
Thank you very much, Sir Chair. I'm Prem Singh Tharu from Asia Indigenous People Pact, one of the co-facilitators of the Indigenous Peoples Measure Group to the UNEP UNIA. I'm representing the voice of Indigenous peoples from Asia and all regions across the globe. We would like to convey our gratitude to the Secretariat for their hard work to develop and introduce the document strengthening the effective engagement of Indigenous peoples as well as local communities. Under the agenda item J, cross-cutting matters, first implementation of decision EMC 5/1. We heartily acknowledge and respect their great initiatives taken forward aiming to ensure the engagement and participation of Indigenous peoples in the COP and related events of the Minamata Convention and Mercury. While acknowledging and appreciating the progressive actions of the Secretariat, we are feeling our hearts so happy because naming of the resolution means this document is offensive to the Indigenous peoples and the spirit and mandate of the UN Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People, including to the dedicated institutions and mechanisms like UN Permanent Forum on Indigenous Issues, Expert Mechanism on Rights of Indigenous Peoples, Special Rapporteur on Indigenous Peoples' Rights of Indigenous People, established in the UN and UN process, are completely devalued and disrespected. Therefore, we Indigenous peoples urge the following corrective actions. First, name correction of the document, strengthening effective engagement of Indigenous peoples, only not as well as local communities. Adding as well as local communities violates the right to self-determination, the fundamental collective rights of Indigenous peoples. In the name of inclusion, putting local communities together with Indigenous people is always unacceptable and objectionable. All sections and subsections across the document, wherever it has been used, local communities with conjunctions and with as well as have to be removed or separated. Putting local communities with Indigenous peoples and Indigenous people with local communities intends to create confusion, conflation, conflict, division, and disrespect, and also promote the disparities, colonization, polarization, and violates of the collective rights of Indigenous people. Establish International Indigenous Peoples Forum on Mercury, IIPFM, because Indigenous peoples have self-organized in climate, biodiversity, and plastic process as the International Indigenous Peoples Forum. So we demand to respect the legacy of the well-established and institutionalized platform or mechanism. We Indigenous people must be led to be self-organized and establish our roles and functions as Indigenous peoples constituency, that also highlighted by our the first statement. Financial support to Indigenous peoples for their meaningful and effective participation in the COP and associated meetings and events must be guaranteed, as it has been mentioned, the special trust fund. The financial support to Indigenous peoples must not be tokenized and considered as welfare and grace. Indigenous peoples' land and territories, one, rich natural resources areas, including Mercury resources, and we Indigenous people are the severely impacted groups, either in the name of extraction of the natural resources or in the name of production and disposal of those products. Hence, extraction of the natural resources or the Mercury production resources from to disposal of the products in indigenous land and territories must be stopped, and all due diligence process must be abided by. We Indigenous peoples look forward to working together with the Secretariat and member states in partnership for protection of the healthy environment, people and planet. Collectively, we are always together with the Secretariats and member states, including our other like-minded organizations and colleagues. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Universidad Autónoma de Querétaro.
Autonomous University of Querétaro. And please, would you be a little briefer than the previous speaker? Thank you. Thank you. First of all, we acknowledge the importance of this decision on Indigenous peoples, and we would also like to encourage the parties to ensure that this document is expanded in scope. Firstly, Indigenous peoples affected by the constant demand for mercury in mining should be protected. Their rights should be guaranteed with equality and without discrimination. Secondly, we'd like to see, in addition to the document under prevention, a statement to the fact that no Indigenous person should be involved in forced labor in mercury mining, and if they are, they need to be compensated for the harm done to them. Thirdly, the need to ensure prior informed consent in respect of the self-determination of Indigenous peoples and their rights over the minerals on the territory in which they live. Thank you.
Thank you for that intervention. Children and Youth International.
Esteemed Chair, distinguished delegates, and respected relatives, I speak today as a Nakota Indigenous youth carrying the voices of children and youth who live with the daily reality of mercury pollution. Mercury has entered our waters, our food, and our lives, and has dramatically changed our traditional lifeways. While Document 5.1 acknowledges the harm to Indigenous peoples, it does not mention once Indigenous youth or children. The same is true for item 4J, which speaks about strengthening the engagement of Indigenous peoples. Indigenous children and youth are still missing from these provisions. Across the 7 Indigenous socio-cultural regions, children are exposed to mercury, and many grow up with health problems linked to contamination. Yet, our stories are rarely included in the policies meant to protect us. This silence goes against the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples, which says in Article 21 and 22 that Indigenous youth and children must receive special attention in health and environmental programs. As a convention that was adopted after UNDRIP, the Minamata Convention has a unique opportunity and obligation under Article 42 to uphold the rights outlined in the Declaration. We, the Indigenous youth and children, respectfully call on the Conference of the Parties to explicitly recognize Indigenous youth and children as a distinct and vulnerable group within the Minamata Convention framework, acknowledging our exposure and our rights. Integrate Indigenous youth participation at every level, guided by UNDRIP and the principle of free, prior, and informed consent. Develop specific policies and initiatives to address mercury's impact on the lives of Indigenous youth, as well as Indigenous lifeways. and provide dedicated funding to increase participation of Indigenous youth representing the 7 sociocultural regions in the Convention. Finally, we ask that the term Indigenous peoples be desegregated from local communities in accordance with UNDRIP, the UN Permanent Forum on Indigenous Issues, Expert Mechanism on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples, the Special Rapporteur on Indigenous Peoples, and the Interagency Support Group on Indigenous Issues, of which this Convention's Secretariat is a part of. In this vein, we support the launch of the Indigenous Peoples Platform to strengthen Indigenous youth participation in the Convention, and we hope that a future distinct platform is established for local communities and others. We as Indigenous youth are not only inheriting Mercury's damage, we are inheriting the responsibility to fix this problem. We cannot do it if our voices are missing from the room. Pinamaya, thank you.
Thank you very much. I have the Fundación Gaia Amazonas.
Muchas gracias, señor presidente.
Thank you, sir. My name is Gonzalo Bacuna. I am the Secretary General of our organization from Colombia. We have millions of hectares in our area, which are some of the best conserved and protected in the Amazon. However, mining is now affecting us. Colombia is one of the most dangerous countries of the world for environmental activists. We've had a high number of murders in the last 2 years, and those murders include 31 indigenous leaders. The Minamata Convention is an opening up towards indigenous peoples. We acknowledge that, but what it's doing still isn't enough. The decision we're looking at, MC51, was unique. Again, we agree, but we still aren't reflecting properly the really deep-rooted causes of mercury pollution, which affect our peoples, our communities, and our lands, especially through artisanal and small-scale gold mining in Latin America. We support the proposal to enhance indigenous peoples' population through a voluntary trust fund, but in addition to that, we need direct access to financing ourselves so as to take our own conservation and preservation initiatives and to improve the health of our people whose health has been damaged by mercury pollution. We support an advisory group as well, but we are concerned about the representation on it and the structure of it. We're a bit concerned about the way the members would be chosen. Given that the Amazon is so huge and plays such a crucial role in conserving biodiversity and protecting us from the effects of climate change, we need to be involved in this, and we hope that we will be able to use other fora already existing in the international system to bring that about. Thank you.
Le doy la palabra.
Thank you very much. The next speaker is the Inuit Circumpolar Council.
Mr. President. We appreciate the activities of the Minamata Convention Secretariat with regards to Decision 5/1. Mr. President, we need to point out that currently we are lacking a proper framework that enables communication with all Indigenous peoples organizations taking place and that respects Indigenous governance structures. Also, currently, not all activities that took place are inclusive of all Indigenous peoples organizations, which are observers to and active in the Minamata Convention. Mr. President, we request that all Indigenous peoples organizations that are observers to the Minamata Convention are included in the communication and activities pertinent to the Minamata Convention. The proper framework and communication channels need to be set up with the Indigenous peoples and Indigenous peoples organizations that need to be followed. All Indigenous advisory body is one good step in the right direction, but the terms of reference and membership need to be developed with all the Indigenous organizations with proper structure, funding, and Secretariat support to allow for equitable participation. Mr. President, we further request that there is no conflation of Indigenous peoples and local communities. Firstly, Indigenous peoples are rights holders, not stakeholders, and they need to be recognized as such, as pointed out in UNDRIP. Secondly, there are many studies available showing that Indigenous peoples are disproportionately affected from the effects of mercury and need to be considered specifically as vulnerable populations that need to be protected. In the case that there is a need to further discuss the matter of the draft decision of the smaller group, we ask that these discussions are open to Indigenous peoples' organizations. Kuyunani, Mr. President.
Thank you very much. International Indian Treaty Council.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We would like to thank Canada, the EU, Australia, and Colombia for their strong support of Indigenous peoples. We reiterate that Indigenous peoples have long been recognized as a distinct subject of international law with inherent rights under various international legal instruments, including the UN Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples. Our inherent rights, systems of knowledge, governance, grounded in our legal systems, practices, and ancestral teachings is what makes us distinct and unique from other groups in civil society, such as those of local communities or peasant communities. We highlight at the recent 60th session of the Human Rights Council, the Special Rapporteur on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples, Dr. Albert Barume, from the Democratic Republic of the Congo, stated in his report titled Recognition of Indigenous Peoples the following: states have the obligation to recognize Indigenous peoples as particular subjects of international law and holders of specific rights under international law. Without such recognition, states cannot fulfill their international obligations under the Declaration and other instruments. The Special Rapporteur also strongly recommends an immediate end to the conflation of Indigenous peoples with local communities. He notes the two regimes should be kept separate and dealt with separately, as shown by the good practice emerging from the United Nations Convention to Combat Desertification, where distinct caucuses and processes were established. He also states that extending Indigenous peoples' rights to local communities could also cause an empowering dominant groups against Indigenous peoples. In several cases, particularly in Asia and Africa, neighboring communities have dispossessed Indigenous peoples of their ancestral lands, including by racially discriminatory views against their traditional livelihoods. We share this now to show the severity of this situation, and while we support the establishment of this platform, we do not support a combined platform and look forward to future participation, emphasizing our unique, collective, and distinct rights as Indigenous peoples. Chi-miigwech, many thanks.
Thank you very much for that intervention. DMUN Foundation, DMUN Foundation.
Thank you, Mr. President. We at the DMUN Foundation believe that the implementation of decisions noted in 5/1 must move from aspiration towards action. The Secretariat survey gathered 171 responses from 32 countries, and the findings are very much clear. The Indigenous people prioritize human rights protections, recognition of knowledge and spiritual identity, and meaningful participation in the convention processes themselves. This is not optional. However, the implementation faces concrete barriers. The Secretariat documents these explicitly as the lack of structured mechanisms for selecting funded representatives, the absence of predictable funding support for participation, and rigid accreditation processes that do not recognize Indigenous governance strategies or structures. The draft decision noted in 6/17 establishes voluntary Indigenous peoples funding mechanism and an interim advisory group. We welcome this, but we simultaneously call on parties to allocate dedicated multi-year funding for Indigenous peoples' participation in COP meetings and subsidiary bodies, expanding the language access beyond current UN official languages to include Indigenous languages in key convention documents and summaries, and to operationalize the interim advisory group with clear terms of reference and resource commitments at COP7. Without these commitments, the platform and advisory mechanisms will remain as institutional symbols that lack substance. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We have the Indigenous Peoples Organization.
Hahom, Mr. President, Taigwei Itunokena Atiaono. Good evening, relatives. We strongly reject the continual attempts at conflating us with other groups, particularly that of local communities. We have worked for multiple decades to have our rights upheld and respected. It took almost 30 years to get a declaration on our rights, which represent the minimum standards. Indigenous rights are part of international law, and we cannot accept domestic or national law to be imposed upon us to undermine our rights. I remind all that Article 42 of the UN Declaration reads, "The UN, its bodies, including the Permanent Forum on Indigenous Issues and specialized agencies, including at the country level and states, shall promote, respect, and full application of the provisions of this declaration and follow up the effectiveness of this declaration." As our Inuit brother from the Inuit Circumpolar Council stated, we are rights holders. And I add that we shall not be compromising them. Nothing beneath the minimum standards of the declaration. Hahom.
Thank you very much. And lastly, we have the Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights.
Thank you. Indigenous peoples continue to face disproportionate risks from mercury pollution due to their close reliance on natural resources, limited access to healthcare and monitoring, and barriers to their participation in national and international decision-making processes. Solutions are needed that uphold their rights to health and a healthy environment, and their collective rights as enshrined in the UN Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples. States must deal with mercury contamination as the human rights issue that it is, and increase efforts to strengthen a human rights-based approach to the implementation of the Convention, including by 1. Eliminating the use of mercury in ASGM, 2. Ensuring that implementation measures guarantee free, prior, and informed consent of Indigenous peoples, and that Indigenous peoples are meaningfully included in decision-making processes. 3. Creating a mechanism for funding the participation of Indigenous peoples to attend meetings under the Convention, including COPs. 4. Supporting the creation of an interim ad hoc advisory group composed of 7 self-nominated representatives from Indigenous peoples organizations accredited as observers to the Convention, to advise on matters related to strengthening the effective engagement and participation of Indigenous peoples in the work of the Convention. And 5, include a standing agenda item at every COP to consult with Indigenous peoples. OHCHR stands ready to collaborate with parties, Indigenous peoples, and the Secretariat to ensure that the implementation of the Convention fully respects and advances the rights of Indigenous peoples, including those to participation, self-determination, and a clean, healthy, and sustainable environment. I thank you.
Thank you very much. And that concludes the interventions in plenary on this cross-cutting issue, and specifically on the draft decision, the follow-up decision 5/1. So we heard in the beginning the statement from Indigenous peoples, including the establishment of this International Indigenous People Forum on Mercury. Then we heard the parties who spoke supporting the engagement of Indigenous peoples in the work of the Convention. We also heard some recognition from some parties on the calling for the equal recognition of local communities. We heard, lastly, interventions from Indigenous peoples, observer organizations to the Convention on matters of engagement in this treaty and the impact of mercury on Indigenous people, especially arising from ASGM. Now, Regarding the proposed decision contained in document 17, we heard several parties expressing comments on elements of the draft decision, most specifically on the new fund trust proposed in the text, as well as this advisory committee. From all these expressions in plenary, I heard that parties are ready to engage in discussions to further develop this draft decision. The countries that took the floor and expressed interventions with regards to the draft decision containing document 17 are in order: Canada, EU, Australia, the United States, Mexico, and lastly Brazil was the last to intervene in this matter. My suggestion to plenary is that a small group is to be established. This small group will further develop the proposed decision in document 17. I will invite to this small group 2 participants from the indigenous communities accredited as observers to this meeting. I will announce later on in plenary the name of the facilitator for this group for your consideration. Is this an agreeable way forward? Seeing no objection, it is so decided. Thank you very much for all your interventions. Let's now move on to the implementation of decision MC5/15. The second item, or the second sub-item of item 4D, cross-cutting matters. Let me recall that COP5 adopted decision MC5/15 on the Gender Action Plan, which invited parties and requested the Secretariat to carry out some activities during the biennium 2024-2025. Now I invite the Secretariat to introduce this agenda item.
Thank you, Mr. President. In decision MC5/15 on the Gender Action Plan, the Conference of the Parties invited parties and requested the Secretariat to carry out some activities during the biennium 2024-2025. I would like to recognize the financial support of Sweden and Finland, which enabled the Secretariat to carry out some of these activities. I would also like to note in particular the establishment of the Women's Caucus, was participating this week for the first time to a meeting of the Conference of the Parties to the Minamata Convention. A review of activities carried out during the biennium 2024-2025 to address health concerns of women and children is set out in Information Document 25. On the basis of the progress made, and as requested in Decision 5/15, the Secretariat has identified for consideration by the Conference of the Parties at this meeting activities that could be carried out by the Secretariat and the parties during the biennium 2026-2027, subject to availability of resources. This is set out in Annex 1 to Working Document 18. Furthermore, a draft decision is set out in Annex 2 to Document 18 for consideration of the Conference of the Parties. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Secretariat. The secretary is messing with me, is messing with my script. So now I'll open the floor for interventions under this agenda item. United Kingdom.
Thank you, Mr. President, for giving me the floor. The UK is strongly committed to gender equality and empowering all women and girls. We strongly support gender transformative approaches being integrated into the implementation of the Minamata Convention, and we welcome the work of the Secretariat and parties here to implement the Minamata Gender Action Plan. We are therefore confused as to why there is no explicit reference to the Gender Action Plan in this draft decision. This plan was welcomed by parties at COP5, and we find this new decision significantly narrows that agreed scope of activities. We would be grateful if the Secretariat could provide some clarity on this matter. In our view, a reference to the Gender Action Plan is both logical and important, and we would like this draft decision to include such language. We think this matter might be best addressed in a small group. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you very much, United Kingdom, and apologies to the Women's Caucus, because I was supposed to give you the floor first before parties, as we agreed in the Bureau. You see, this is what happens when the Secretariat messes with my script. Women's Caucus, you have the floor.
Thank you, President. I'm speaking on behalf of the Women's Caucus for Minamata and Mercury. In no other chemical convention, the impacts of chemical and waste pollution are so clearly interconnected with social and biological gender aspects. In the agenda items on artisanal and small-scale gold mining and on cosmetics, gender plays a significant role. This is why the adoption of the Gender Action Plan under Decision 5/15 was so relevant and urgently needed, and why we would also like to express our concern that the Gender Action Plan has only been partially implemented. While awareness and understanding of the links between mercury and gender issues have increased, gender considerations are still not adequately integrated into the Convention's implementation, nor are they adequately reflected in the design and implementation plans at the national level and in monitoring and reporting. With us now being part of the table, we can work together to realize the goals of the Gender Action Plan. To achieve this, we recommend the urgent establishment of the Women's Delegate Fund listed under Activity 6 in the Gender Action Plan to ensure equitable representation of women in all the work of the Convention and support meaningful participation of underrepresented groups, including indigenous women, women from least developed countries, and small island developing states. To have capacity building for parties, women's rights organizations, and other relevant stakeholders to mainstream women's engagement in the implementation of the GAP at national level and in the work of the Convention. In addition, to further support the participation of girls and young women in the Convention, we would like to echo the voices of youth and their request to the Secretariat to develop, in consultation with youth, a proposal for a children and youth engagement and action plan to mainstream youth engagement across all aspects of the Convention. Thank you, President.
Thank you very much, and my apologies to you once again for not giving you the floor at the outset of this agenda item. European Union, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. The European Union and its member states would like to thank the Secretariat for the work done to carry out activities during the biennium 2024 to 2025 to implement the Gender Action Plan, and for preparing the proposed list of activities that could be carried out by the Secretariat and parties during the biennium 2026-27. The European Union and its member states support and place high importance on addressing women and children's health concerns in relation to mercury, but note that the current draft decision focuses exclusively on the health of women and children and do not cover the wider activities related to the Gender Action Plan as agreed at COP5. We would therefore seek clarification from the Secretariat on why the scope of actions presented for both biennia is narrower than the previous decision of COP5 on the matter. We propose to amend the draft decision to reflect the continued importance of implementing the agreed Gender Action Plan in its entirety. Annex 1 of the draft decision would also need to be modified accordingly. Thank you.
Thank you very much to the European Union. Argentina has the floor.
Thank you very much, President. My country's commitment to the rights of women is sustained, constant and firm, and has been for some time. Our commitment is reflected in our domestic legislation and also in our gender policies, many of which go well beyond current existing international standards. We should like to refer to a perhaps terminological, perhaps a conceptual issue, which for our delegation is of considerable importance. There are various viewpoints which are equally valid and equally complementary when it comes to strengthening human rights, including equality between men and women in all areas of life. The Gender Action Plan, proposed as it is at the moment, has a vision which we would like to touch upon. We don't think it actually guarantees equity. We do think it might lead to further types of exclusion and worsen inequality, instead of the non-discrimination principle to which we're all attached and which we're all trying to drive forward. My country, the Republic of Argentina, would like to say that it understands the word gender as defined in Article 7.3 of the Rome Statutes. If rights are looked at only from the point of view of gender, however, then other viewpoints which are equally valid are risking being left out, and so are people such as those who are elderly, those who are very young, those who have mental disabilities. We need, we think, a much more inclusive approach, particularly when it comes to vulnerability. The document activities to address health concerns of women and children in the biennium 2026-2027 includes a series of measures related to the prevention and treatment of the effect of mercury on women, children, and vulnerable groups. In conclusion, my delegation would suggest that the title be brought into line with paragraph 1 of the text, and that would require the following modification: addressing health concerns of vulnerable populations, particularly women and children. Thank you. Thank you very much, Argentina. I now call upon Norway.
Thank you, Mr. President. Norway would like to echo the interventions made by the UK and the EU, and we regret the too limited reference to women and children. Like others, we would also ask for a reference to the Gender Action Plan adopted at COP5. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Norway, for that intervention. El próximo país parte.
Next country on my list as a state party is Chile. Thank you very much, President. Chile is grateful for the suggested inclusion of the gender viewpoint, and that on the basis of the implementation of a plan of action. Chile considers inclusion from the gender point of view in a series of national initiatives we're already taking and which are focused on what is being done in this respect here and in other environmental fora. Our efforts are being directed at coordinating the various parties involved so as to be able to identify those areas where we've made progress and those where we still have to. We have an example of this with dental amalgam. We urge parties to focus their efforts on implementing the Gender Action Plan. Chile will be happy to share the experience and practices which she has had and is still having with others at national level. Thank you.
Muchas gracias.
Thank you very much, Chile. I call on Mexico. Thank you very much, Chairman. Mexico is grateful to the Secretariat for the submission of the document on the health of women and children in the context of the Minamata Convention and recognizes the progress that has been made on implementing the Gender Plan of Action adopted by all of us at COP5. We'd particularly like to highlight the creation of the Women's Caucus, and we congratulate all its members. We attach the highest possible priorities to substantive equality for and full participation of women and children in all environmental fora. Under the leadership of our President, Mrs. Claudia Sheinbaum, the first female president of the country, we have put human rights and gender equality at the heart of government policy and in action we take internationally. This is because we believe there is no environmental justice without social justice. In the Minamata Convention, we are ready to share the experience we've had and the good practices we've tried to apply on environmental health from the point of view of the gender perspective, as well as with respect to the provision of scientific education to women and children. We support strengthening the plan of action in such a way that the decision we take on this, as in the previous item, will be something that can be practically implemented and which will reflect the constructive attitude of cooperation which has prevailed here in these discussions on issues of crucial importance to us all. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you, Mexico, for that contribution. The next speaker is Uganda.
Thank you, Mr. President, for according Uganda a floor. Uganda aligns itself with Africa's position regarding the implementation of Decision MC5/15 and the development of Gender Action Plan to address the health concerns of women and children. Uganda commends the Secretariat and all parties for their continued efforts to integrating consideration of gender in the implementation of the Minamata Convention. We particularly appreciate the focus on protecting women and children from the occupational safety and health concerns from the mercury exposure, especially in ASMG. Mr. President, Uganda recognizes that women and children in artisanal and small-scale gold mining faces formidable challenges, especially economic barriers like limited access to finance and equipment-based and gender-based violence, including poor working conditions that require action to ensure safe and secure use of mercury-free technologies. Uganda acknowledges the vital role of women and children as agents of socio-economic transformation. With support from the partners such as Planet Gold and the UNEP project, Uganda has made formidable progress in advancing women empowerment and children participation in the implementation of the convention. In this regard, Uganda welcomes the draft decision and applauds the Secretariat for its practical guidance. We call upon the Conference of Parties to enhance support for women, vulnerable and local communities through initiatives that improve access to sustainable mercury-free mining technologies and strengthen capacities, both institutional and technical, to ensure effective occupational safety and health measures in mercury-affected sectors. Uganda reaffirms its commitment to working with all parties and partners to achieve the objectives of the Convention in this regard. Thank you very much, Mr. President.
Thank you very much, Uganda. The last speaker of the parties are the United States.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'll again be brief. The United States supports this draft decision as presented that advances optimal health outcomes and empowerment of women and children. We look forward to working with other parties to finalize a draft decision. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. So the first intervention on this agenda item came from the UK. And the UK, I think, asked for a clarification to the Secretariat, if I'm not mistaken. So I will give the floor to the Secretariat to explain, or rather to answer the question that was later replicated by the EU and Norway. And then we will proceed with a way forward.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good day, everyone, and thank you so much for giving me the floor. Let me start by recalling that indeed in COP5, there was a decision adopted, MC5/15, Gender Action Plan. And as part of that decision, COP welcomed the Gender Action Plan that has been developed by the Secretariat. Just to recall also that this Gender Action Plan includes a wide range of activities that are suggested activities that are for secretariats to implement and possibly or invitation to parties to implement those activities, but also other various organization partners that could also take on of some of those listed activities. The approach that when developing the action plan, the Secretariat took an approach that this document is to provide us with a baseline and long-term plan on many activities that can be carried out. And in order to provide some framework in structure how we are addressing these various possible activities and look into timing of those. Already in COP5, the Secretariat took some of those activities into the proposed decision and suggested that those would be prioritized for a given biennium, and there was a set of activities to implement by the Secretariat and set of activities proposed to parties. And this COP5 decision was structured in such a way that there was attention to this select of activities, while of course we have a gender action plan in place. And following adoption of this decision, upon initiative of the Secretariat and agreement by the President, we have also this included on the agenda of the COP as one of the cross-cutting matters. And following the same construct, also in this decision, there is only a subset of activities proposed to pay attention to during this biennium, both for the Secretariat and for the parties. This, of course, does not mean that all other activities could not be implemented, subject to availability of resources for the Secretariat, but also up to willingness and interest of parties and various observers. So just to conclude, to say we see the Gender Action Plan as a baseline, and for each biennium, Secretariat offers or proposes which activities to focus on, so we can also be clear in measuring the progress in the implementation of the action plan. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much to the Secretariat. I hope that explanation will satisfy the UK and the others that posed this question. Now I will give the floor to Children and Youth.
Thank you for the floor. My name is Hemavati Shekhar, and I'm speaking on behalf of the Chemicals and Waste Youth Platform and Global Indigenous Youth Caucus. Mr. President, children and youth have been the most harmed by mercury exposure, but until now, we have been the least heard in decisions that most impact our health, rights, and futures. We have a proposal to share to address this gap in this decision. To provide context, over 30 youth traveling from 17 countries, from Bolivia to Papua New Guinea, Sudan to Japan, Peru to Rwanda, are here on ground as the first global youth delegation to a Minamata COP. Each of them has brought to discussions not only lived experience of mercury impacts, but also ideas, leadership, and solutions rooted in their communities and peoples. We also celebrate that this COP hosts the largest number of indigenous peoples ever to engage in a COP, including 9 indigenous youth representatives. And we further congratulate the launch of the Minamata Women's Caucus. On Sunday, 2nd November, the youth constituencies were proud to organize the first youth forum on mercury pollution as a special event of COP6, where we launched the Mercury Youth Task Force, a coalition of 70 youth constituencies, organizations, individuals, and children and youth living on the front lines of mercury pollution from mining and industrial releases. A global youth declaration on mercury is being drafted and endorsed by youth this week as an outcome of the forum, and we ask parties and the Secretariat to review and incorporate its recommendations. Mr. President, distinguished delegates, the momentum for youth engagement in the Minamata Convention process is surging. This is in step with the broader commitment of countries to strengthen meaningful youth participation at the national and the international level as agreed in the Pact for the Future, an increasing number of MEAs formalizing youth engagement through dedicated resolutions, action plans, including Ramsar, CITES, CBD, and UNCCD. We hope the Minamata Convention can be the very first MEA on chemicals and waste to champion children and youth engagement. In this context, on the implementation of the decision MC 5/15, activities to address health concerns of women and children in the biennium 26-27, we respectfully propose the following addition to the draft decisions annex and request the parties to support an inclusion during your discussions. The text proposal is as follows. Request the Secretariat to develop, in consultation with youth, a proposal for children and youth engagement, an action plan to mainstream full, meaningful youth engagement in the convention. We see this proposal fitting appropriately in Annex following item B, which focuses on women engagement in the convention, as this decision specifically addresses activities related to women and children. We are grateful to parties who have already engaged with the youth delegation on this proposal, and we welcome the opportunity to continue these exchanges with more delegations to ensure convention's implementation reflects intergenerational justice. I thank you.
Thank you very much. Next is the office of the, oh, we have a party who wants to take the floor. Is the Bahamas. Coming a little bit late.
Hi. Oh, sorry for coming late. Good morning. Thank you, Mr. President, for allowing the Bahamas to take the floor. As this is the first time the Bahamas is taking the floor, we would like to express our sincere appreciation to the Secretariat for its outstanding work in facilitating this meeting. We also extend our gratitude to the government and the people of Switzerland for their warm hospitality and for hosting us here this week. The Bahamas wishes to express its support for the proposal put forward by the Children and Youth constituency to include text in the draft decision on meaningful youth engagement. Involving children and youth about Mercury is not only about raising awareness, but about building a generation committed to environmental stewardship and ensuring sustainability of the Minamata Convention's goals. Youth and children are the future of a mercury-free world. We would be required to take up this mantle, and we must ensure a smooth transition by equipping and empowering them today. We recognize that the active participation of young people is essential to the success of the Minamata Convention and to the broader global effort to protect human health and the environment from the adverse effects of mercury. Their voices bring energy, innovation, and a long-term perspective that are crucial for shaping sustainable and inclusive solutions. Accordingly, the Bahamas supports the request for the Secretariat to develop a Children and Youth Engagement Action Plan. Such a plan will serve as an important step toward institutionalizing youth participation, ensuring that their contributions are not only heard, but meaningfully integrated into the work of the Convention. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Bahamas. Next is the Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights.
Thank you, Mr. President. We welcome the ongoing attention of the Conference of the Parties to addressing the health impacts of mercury, particularly on women and children. Mercury exposure affects the enjoyment of a wide range of human rights, including those to health and a healthy environment. Women and children are among those most at risk, with impacts compounded in communities affected by poverty and limited access to healthcare and information, and for Indigenous women who are heavily dependent on natural resources. At COP6, we encourage parties to consider integrating human rights and gender equality frameworks into national action plans under Article 7, ensuring that measures to protect women and children are participatory, data-driven, and responsive to local contexts. 2, ensuring the effective participation of women in decision-making, implementation, monitoring, and evaluation of plans under the Convention. 3, requesting the Secretariat to develop, in consultation with youth, a proposal for a Children and Youth Engagement Action Plan to mainstream youth engagement in the Convention. 4, strengthening health data collection, monitoring, and capacity building efforts to better identify and address exposure risks for women and children, including by disaggregating information on gender, age, and occupation. The interlinkages of women and children and health concerns is prevalent throughout the text of the Convention, reflected in the preamble, Article 16 on health aspects, Article 18 on public information, awareness and education, Article 19 on research, development, and monitoring, and Article 22 on effectiveness evaluation. It is therefore essential that gender considerations are cross-cutting throughout the implementation of the Convention. In order for parties to fulfill their commitment to protect against the hazards of mercury emissions and releases, the right to a clean, healthy, and sustainable environment must be upheld, ensuring that women and children everywhere can live, work, and play in non-toxic environments. I thank you.
Thank you very much. IPEN has the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. IPEN welcomes the review of the activities during the biennium 2024-2025 to implement the Gender Action Plan, which was prepared by the Secretariat for this meeting. IPEN supports the activities to address the mercury-related health concerns of women, children, and other sensitive populations in the biennium 2026-27. The implementation of the Gender Action Plan will address the specific concerns of women in relation to mercury pollution impacts and increase engagement of women leaders in Mercury Treaty deliberations. Specific actions that parties could take include introducing gender and sex disaggregated data indicators in national implementation plans, national action plans, collecting information from parties and other stakeholders on capacity building needs and with respect to mercury exposure of women and children and other activities. The importance of the enhanced role of women in engagement with the treaty and its implementation cannot be understated. The Women's Caucus of the treaty has an important role to advance the equality and empowerment of women. Participation of women is essential to ensure cross-cutting issues are addressed and marginalized populations are heard. In 2017, the UNEP and IPEN launched a partnership at UNEA 3 to focus on gender and chemicals. IPEN strongly support more activities and funding to ensure that women have a much more prominent role in the Mercury Treaty and other related chemicals and waste agreements. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you very much, IPEN. And last is Universidad Autónoma de Querétaro.
Gracias, señor. Thank you, President. I'm speaking to acknowledge the importance of this decision on the health of women and children as a result of being exposed to mercury. We would like to say that the impact of artisanal and small-scale mercury mining in Mexico on women and children is very important because of the ineffective international action taken to slow down the sale and trade in it. Because of their gender, women and children are particularly exposed, even with the use of ovens in their homes. They breathe air tainted with mercury and eat food tainted with mercury on a day-to-day basis. Trying to achieve substantive equality between genders is very important, but very respectively, President, I have to say that we don't have any reference to women in mercury mining in this document. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So in general, all the interventions that I could hear support this gender action plan. We have some disagreements perhaps in terminology that has impact beyond terminology, but nevertheless, probably we need some words to accommodate all our positions. And then we also heard from the Bahamas the support for an action line to include in Annex 1, if I recall correctly, supporting the intervention by children and youth, a group observer to this COP. So what I will do, because I don't see substantial disagreements, is to invite to stay in this room after we adjourn plenary, so we can go to the office that has been assignated to me, the one delegate from the UK, one delegate from the European Union, one delegate from Argentina, one delegate from Norway, one delegate from Chile, Mexico, Uganda, and the USA. So as soon as we adjourn plenary, if you can stay here or come to the dais, and we will go together and we will try to solve and present a clean text to the plenary later on during this week. Is this a good path forward? I see no objection, so we will proceed that way. We still have 5 minutes, so I will ask the Secretariat if they are ready. Very good. So the Secretariat is ready to go with the housekeeping. And then we also have the special recognition, a Secretariat's initiative. Who will take the floor? Isaku?
Thank you, President. The housekeeping information. The contact group on program work and budget for parties only will meet at room 4, floor -1, from 1 o'clock to 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and we'll meet again from 4 o'clock to 6 o'clock in the afternoon. The contact group on technical matters will meet at room A from 7 o'clock to 9 o'clock p.m. The Friends of the President group on legal matters will meet from 1 o'clock to 3 o'clock in the afternoon at room 9. The consultations on waste will meet at room 11 plus 12, combined room, from 3 o'clock to 4 o'clock in the afternoon. The consultations on cosmetics will room at room 9 from 4 o'clock to 6 o'clock p.m. This is it for housekeeping announcement. Thank you. Apologies, I missed the information about events. We have a special event today, the launch of Women's Caucus, taking place today during the lunch period from 1 o'clock to 2 o'clock at room 14 on the second floor.
Yes. United States.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. And we don't mean to cause any chaos in your schedule, but we wondered if you and the Secretariat might give some consideration to having our 1 o'clock scrum in this room be instead closer to 2 o'clock, given all of the competing priorities at 1 o'clock. If that's not possible, on gender, if that's not possible, we understand, but we thought we might just seek your indulgence if that might be an option. Thank you.
So, if I understood correctly, you are suggesting that we meet at 2 o'clock instead of 1 o'clock? Australia?
Thank you, Mr. President. May I also ask the Secretariat if there is a dedicated space and time for the small group discussion on the Indigenous financial mechanism, please?
So on the Indigenous financial mechanism, I need to find the facilitator for that group. So once I have the facilitator, I will put it to you for approval, and then we will set the time and room for those consultations to take place. So on the question of the U.S., which is asking to delay these consultations with me at 2 o'clock. Does anybody of the parties involved have a different approach? Or we can meet at 2 o'clock? I see no objections, so we will meet at 2 o'clock in room B, as in Bravo 211. Once again, I give the floor to the Secretariat.
Thank you, Mr. President. So for today's special recognition, we will start with the specific International Program Governing Board, which at its 9th meeting, the Governing Board elected Andrew Clark from the United States of America and Oviet Meringo Baloy from South Africa as co-chairs for the current term. We also acknowledge the co-chairs of the Effectiveness Evaluation Group, Lynn Roy Christian, Antigua and Barbuda, and Katerina Sevkova from Czechia. Thank you also to Itsuki Kuroda, Japan, for your contribution. From the open-ended scientific group, we recognize Dominique Balik-Porcro from Côte d'Ivoire and Alexandra Stefan, Canada. Thank you also to Terry Keating, United States of America, for his contribution. We further acknowledge the former Vice Chair of the Implementation and Compliance Committee, Musa Kuzumila and Gunila, and the current Vice Chair, Eva Salplastova. Thank you also Yunfang Hu, China, for her contribution. We appreciate all your work with the Convention to promote implementation and compliance with the Convention to make Mercury history. This is a big personal commitment. Taking on the role of chairing and facilitator is a significant commitment of time and energy and is essential for the smooth operation of our convention. We are also very thankful to your governments for giving your time and resources to these roles. Thank you. We would like to welcome you on stage for a photo when the plenary closed. Before we commemorate to the co-chairs with a photo, let us make a round of applause for the parties who were missed due to a technical error yesterday's recognition of parties submitting full national report, Uganda and Comoros. We are pleased to add Comoros and Uganda to the list of honorees for early submission. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The morning plenary is adjourned.